Hello and welcome to a new mod showcase episode for Farming Simulator 15. This time we have a look at a mod that expands on the in-game helper. AutoCombine adds new options for all harvesters when they use the helper. We will show you what these options are and how they work in a moment. Stay tuned. The Modification AutoCombine is installed as usual, just put the archive in the mod folder of the game. Once that is done, the mod is available in each new game and can also be used in any save game. AutoCombine is an extension of the helper for harvesters. In the stock game the helper is very limited, it needs straight field edges to align itself and only works in a stripe pattern. That is also the reason why standard maps have all square fields. Many mod maps have a very nice design and have fields that adapt to the landscape without field edges that have been drawn with a ruler. Unfortunately, this limits the usefulness of the helper quite a bit. This mod solves that problem. AutoCombine can now work fields from the outside inward and align itself on the plants. Therefore, any field edge can now be followed without the helper getting stuck on objects outside the field. Of course, the helper can still use the normal stripe pattern, however additional options can be set to define how he turns and what distance he will keep. One can, for example, prohibit the helper from going in reverse. A nice side effect of these options has to do with Forage Harvesters. These self-driving harvesters can use the helper only if you drive beside them to unload them directly. The moment you attach a trailer, the helper will no longer work. Now, if you use this mod to set the option to not use reverse anymore, the helper will also work with Forage Harvesters, an extremely useful effect. The last example of the usefulness of this mod is the harvest on very large fields with several harvesters. You can try to do that with the stock helper, however they will probably get in the way of each other because they don't track and avoid other vehicles. This mod allows you to configure the helper of each harvester to keep enough distance so that every machine can do its work without getting stuck. Once the modification is installed and you are sitting in a harvester, the new interface can be activated with numpad 7. From that moment on you can use the mouse to activate the icons. Press numpad 7 again to deactivate the interface. The first option activates or deactivates the helper. You can of course still use the stock H key to do it. The second option determines whether the harvester will drive on or stop while unloading. Both options have their uses depending on whether you want to drive next to the harvester or not. The next two options define the active unloading side. By default that is set to left since most harvesters do indeed unload on the left side, but you can change it to the right side if necessary. This option also defines the direction of the circle maneuver, clockwise for left or counterclockwise for right. The last option on the first row allows to manually force the next work step, meaning if the helper gets stuck for example, you can force him to start the next turn and that sometimes solves the problem. The first option on the second row determines whether AutoCombine will assist the stock helper or not. If you switch AutoCombine off, the helper will act exactly as you would expect from the stock game. The next option, Distance Keeper, is especially useful when using several harvesters. The harvester that follows now keeps track of the front machine and keeps a safe distance so that the front harvester can do his maneuvers. In a direct comparison, you can see that, when the option is disabled, the distance is not kept and thus the machines get in the way of each other. The next option toggles between harvest patterns. You can choose between the classic stripe pattern or a circular one. The advantage of the circular pattern is that the unloading side always stays the same and thus the harvester never fills up while the pipe shows towards the inside of the field. The last option on the second row decides whether the helper is allowed to move in reverse or not. This is crucial for forage harvesters the moment they have a trailer attached. Without this option they can't use a helper, but once they are prohibited from reversing, the helper can safely turn on the field edge. Of course, this option can be useful on other harvesters too. The first two options on the last row change the work width of the helper. AutoCombine calculates the work width using the cutter bar as reference. Nonetheless, sometimes it can be useful to fine-tune it. The next two options change the spacing of the turning maneuver on the field edge. This can be useful if you want to give larger machines more space to turn so that they have enough room to realign themselves correctly to the field edge. The last option is called Auto Steer and activates the half-automatic mode of AutoCombine. If this option is turned on, you will have to drive the harvester to the field edge yourself. At that moment, AutoCombine will take over the steering while you will still have to accelerate and decelerate. Once you reach the field edge, you will have to turn the harvester manually, and once aligned, AutoCombine will take over the steering again. Now you have seen all the options that AutoCombine offers. It is indeed a very useful extension to the stock helper. Doesn't matter if used to keep the pipe on the left side, allowing forage harvesters to work autonomously, or using multiple harvesters to work at the same time on large fields. The video description has more information and links, and don't forget to thank the modders for their work.